call to order the City Council Special Budget Study Session for April 23rd, 2014. We have a roll call, please.
Mayor Slater?
Here.
Councilmember Campbell?
Here.
Councilmember Fleming?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Henderson?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick? Here. Councilmember Pennington?
Here.
Councilmember Teets?
Here. All present. Ttonight's discussion item is continuation of the proposed fiscal year 2014-15 annual budget and three-year budget. And I will turn the meeting over to City Manager Kishnick. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, public. Everyone should have the handout for tonight that shows the slides, because in the honor of time and efficiency, we are not going to go through all these slides verbatim, but we will hit the high points, and there'll always be time for questions and answers after each presentation, as well as a wrap-up at the end that we will conduct to summarize and then address anything that needs to be followed up on, if there's anything for the May 12th meeting, which is when this will be presented for a public hearing, the budget. So let me start by summarizing from Monday night and going through all the presentations, summarizing each one from Monday night. And that is really what it came down to in the end was we need to follow up on the volunteer firefighter incentive plan with the representatives from the stations and the actuaries to determine what the plan should look like. We know we want to go to a plan that allows for greater flexibility and investments, but also what should the level of benefit be, working together with the station reps. So we will be doing that as we go forward in the summer and fall, presenting that information. Number two, as we've said all along, and we do have a fantastic library presentation tonight, but we will be addressing library funding fall of 2014, so that's something that will be ongoing. And then finally, we took action, or there was consensus, I should say, for the Nature Center and Historic Village for $75,000 in the first year. Historic Village continued at that level. Nature Center going back to $50,000 in the next 2 years for the three-year budget, at least based on them presenting a strategic plan from the Nature Society. Secondly, Troy Community Coalition and Troy Youth Assistance, there was consensus to go present the recommended funding levels of $10,000 and $25,000 respectively. And we did receive via email today from me at least the budgets from each organization. We will be asking for balance sheets, because in the case of the, is it the Troy Community Coalition? Yeah, Troy Community Coalition, you may notice that there's a $47,000 from reserves requirement, and the request from us was $25,000. So there is a bit of a gap there, but I'm sure they have a plan, and I'm sure we don't know what their reserves are. So in the name of total transparency, we would ask for that information and submit it to council as well. So that's my wrap up. That's my summary of the consensus from the other night. And showing tonight, we would, of course, be remiss if we didn't have a significant capital presentation and the $10 to $16 million capital plan that's presented. We will talk about a few of the projects, not a lot, because we've talked about capital for some time now, and TroyRoadsRock.com is out there, and that project is going as we speak. So we won't be addressing that, but we will be talking about the funding level and the gap between revenues and expenditure needs that is happening, and we need to address that because the revenue is static from the millage. It is capped, so really the only variable is the expenditure side and the project side. So it's a lot of needs that are in there and not wants, but funding is limited, and you'll see the impact on that fund of the city's significant investment in infrastructure over many years. So it's a very positive story for the city of Troy, but it does have some financial implications looking ahead going forward. Then we will have the issue presentations, which I think everyone will enjoy. And staff has spent a lot of time collaborating and working together. to highlight some of the bigger issues that face the city. And then, when I say issues, I only use that for lack of a better term. I don't mean that issues are something where there's a problem with it in this area. You know, I got a call or two saying, do we really have a problem with this or that? And that's not the subject at all. It's just, it's how it works. It's the contracts that may be involved, or the strategies that are being presented and promoted on an ongoing basis to make sure that it's the most effective, efficient program or initiative. And we wanted to share that with council and get feedback. So that's what the issue presentations are. And then, of course, I'll do a wrap-up. I'll walk us through all 300 pages of the budget at the end, just because I think everyone would want to be reminded about all the different areas of the budget. And I'll try to summarize it, though, fairly quickly. So I'll talk fast. I'd like to thank Councilmember Campbell for donating our
Trying to help the budget out.
what do you call these things?
Blinders.
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 That we have a couple together, and so Jeanette Manning and Gary and Tom are going to do the first Tom's going to do the first presentation on capital, and then we'll get into the issues.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. I guess I'm first up on the batter list here, so I'm going to go ahead and take a swing here and talk about capital. First thing I'd like to note is that really our total revenues and other sources for the capital project fund is around $16.5 million. Of that, taxes make up about 40% of that, or about $6.5 million. And that's kind of our basic bread and butter when it comes to the capital projects fund. It's something we can rely on typically every year. For the 2015 budget, though, another 40% comes in from transfers in. And again, as we know, the major part of that is really from the general fund of around $4.3 million to fund our major streets initiative and part of Fire Station 4. Then the remaining 19.5% is basically from other state grants if we have a federal grant, street project, and some charges for services. But again, over 80% of your funding comes from taxes and transfers in. Next, let's talk about expenditures. Our total capital expenditures are about $19.8 million. Of that, 33%, or $6.5 million, is dedicated towards major streets. Another 28.4% is for local streets, or $5.6 million, and so that equates, to nearly over 60% of our total budget. Again, the remaining 38% is basically the fire station project and other local needs. Finally, I'd like to, I know it's a little hard on the eye, but it's important information for us, really. We have revenues are the blue line, expenditures are the red line. Again, since 2008, if the red line's above the blue line, what are we doing? We're pushing that green line down, and that's really what I want to emphasize here, is the green line. Since 2009, we have had a trend of using basically fund balance to fund our projects. We are estimating a little surplus in 2014 because we didn't finish, I believe, some local road projects that we're planning then in 15 to finish. So now the red line goes above the blue line. So again, it's a use of fund balance. It really seems to be a trend, and really what it says then, our revenues, our basic revenue is tax revenue, about $6.5 million. Our needs are much typically greater than that as it goes. So what are we doing to try to address, again, this void? We're starting a 6-year capital improvement process that is headed up by Mark Miller here, that basically will start right after these budget sessions and re-evaluating our capital needs and prioritizing basically inside our budget. So again, fund balance declined from about $24.5 million in 2008. In 2013, it was about $12 million, and projected to be about $6 million in 2017. Wouldn't be a capital presentation without
I
capital
think
bill.
They said short. So, Tom explained about 60% of capital is roads. Troy Roads Rock did start yesterday. They are out there soft cutting on Long Lake. They do have some traffic impact. There's some lane closures going on right now while they saw. They look to start removing and replacing concrete probably the week of May the 5th. And then you'll see some more kind of permanent type lane closures than what you see now. And they expect to be out on Long Lake probably about 2 months, and then they'd be moving over to John R. as the next section of road. Our major roads, obviously, this year, the Troy Roads Rock is the major component at about $2.5 million. In 2016 and 17, we're going to be moving gears over to Waddles, overlaying about 5 miles of Waddles Road from Coolidge to DeQuinder. Local roads, we do have a slightly larger program this year, about $5.6 million, because we did move local roads out that were going to be done this spring to the fall and next spring to allow Delicio to really hit the major roads hard. And then other than that, we've got every year roughly about $3.5 million is what we budget over the 6-year capital. And from that, we take overlay projects, we identify a project and an amount, and then the remainder goes to fixing with concrete, which can vary from $2 to $3 million a year on concrete roads. Here's next.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. What you see here is pretty much a response from our park survey that we sent out in late 2012 and was receiving through early 2013. Once again, one of the top 2 items we saw from the survey that our constituents wanted was trails and pathways and a dog park. As Tom indicated, our expenditures are exceeding our revenue. So what we did with these projects is instead of fully funding these projects, they're proposed to be matching projects or some grant-funded projects. You can see that the city's funds would be $40,000 a year for the trails and pathways, with a total of $120,000 for 3 years, and then you see the subsequent matches. Dog park, it has the same formula, $42,000 for the first year, and it decreases through our development stage, but again, requires outside funding. Through our Parks and Recreation survey that we put out, we saw a trend in the type of recreation our community is now demanding, and it seems to be, again, towards passive recreation. Some similar passive recreation that we're seeing in the 50 and over crowd is pickleball. Pickleball was one of the things highlighted in the survey. However, it is not represented in the 14-15 budget, but it is represented in the 15-16 budget, with doing an overlay project at one of our parks, changing some tennis courts into pickleball courts. We're estimating that could support up to 4 pickleball courts completely dedicated to that sport. Yes.
Just out of pure curiosity, how can a dog park cost almost $500,000?
Sure.
Is this like, got restaurants in it and everything else?
No, what?
Did you see the bathroom at the airport?
I apologize for it. No problem. What we did is whenever you're developing a park that creates noise, we look at location. We felt that there isn't a suitable location in a currently developed park. So what that is funding is that's funding one of our undeveloped parks to put in a parking lot, to put in a paved driveway to get the parking lot, restrooms, and a shelter. So there's more to go along with just fencing in an area and calling it the dog park.
Councilwoman Hoder?
You've identified where that might be?
No.
Okay.
We've gone as far to say that we don't believe that any of the current developed parks are suitable for a dedicated dog park area.
Councilman T?
The question I had was regarding the outside funding. Is there a plan how that would be generated, or I'm just, that's a pretty sizable chunk of the full expense?
It is, and unfortunately, with the funds that we can put towards the Trails and Pathways, for an example, the funding isn't there to really apply for state grants, because it's not enough funding to develop any kind of connectivity to the regional trails and pathways system. So what we're looking at is more private-public partnerships than state grants. And that goes for both those proposals, is private partner relationships to bring in that outside funding.
Fleming?
Just to clarify, the outside funding, we won't be spending city funds until we have some matching funds, is that right? We're not going to, we have to get an overall plan, but obviously we have to have some matching funds before we start spending our money.
That is correct.
That's correct in the way we've presented it.
Yes.
If there's another idea by this council to do
Sure.
something differently, but the way we've tried to mix our and balance the priorities, we've shown outside funding to make it happen.
Councilwoman Hodder?
Would there be a potential that we could connect to other trails if you had the funding? Are we missing an opportunity?
Yeah, yes, there is opportunity to connect to the regional trail system, the Clinton River Trail, Rochester Hills. The closest point would be South Boulevard and Crooks. Again, it takes some collaboration with Rochester Hills to get there. Again, to plan that out in a larger scope, it would take a lot more funding to develop that connectivity plan that would be applicable for state and federal grants.
But it is possible.
Yes.
Councilman Dean?
How many mills are collected for the capital budget?
1.53.
And is that citizen approved, or is that, how is that?
It's part of the, basically of the capped 8.1 mils between the general fund and the capital project fund, and that's the mix that we've done. 6.5 for the general fund, 1.53 for the capital projects fund, for a total of 8.07 mils. We could levy up to 8.1 mils, but there's correction per se.
So that was a mix, the city council said at one point, is that correct?
Yes.
Great.
If you look on page 25 of the budget book, you could see the breakdown that Tom was just talking about.
District map.
Top of the page, general operating 6.5, refuse 1.07, capital 1.53, and then debt and library, which are voter approved. Make sense?
I think when people hear that word fund balance in the capital, there's a little confusion there.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe if you could just kind of touch on that a little bit.
Well, they're separate funds.
They're separate funds,
Yeah.
but I think when somebody hears that, they go, what is that? And we have been reaching down into fund balance for quite some time for capital. Just a brief explanation.
Go ahead, Tom. Or I could. Tom does it. Brief explanation is there's a general fund and then there's a separate capital fund, and the monies are totally separate, just like another different special revenue fund. And so all the expenditures are accounted for separately. And so if you go to page 43, which I think is one of the best additions staff has made in this budget, where's the capital?
Capital fund.
Capital fund. So the capital fund is on page 46. The general fund is on page 43. So if you go to 43, you see the general fund and its financial position. So this is kind of the all-fund summary. It's not kind of, it's definitely the all-fund summary. You look at the general fund, all the costs and revenues and fund balances are accounted for there. Then you go through special revenue funds. Then you go to page 46, and the capital project fund is 100% accounted for separately as a unit. So they don't, those monies don't get mixed. Just like, on here, the golf course monies don't get mixed with sewer and water with general fund. It's all in local government. The beautiful part is it's fund accounting. So it's fairly easy to understand, right? There's all these buckets. And general fund's one big bucket, And the capital projects fund's a smaller bucket, just like all the others.
Councilwoman Holder.
Not to derail the budget approval now, but the trails and the walkability of Troy, there are increasing emails, conversations from the public about that. Did we decide at some point prior to my tenure that exploring the connectivity to other trails is just out of the scope of our capital program? Or is that, and maybe the rest of the council wants to throw pens at me at this point, I don't know, but is that something, is that a dialogue we should be having, kind of like we did about the bond rating, you know, exploring, if we decide not to do that, that we know what we decided not to do, before we start down another path?
Well, before Mr. Kishnick got here, and before most of the council, I think Wade and I are the only ones left over, we were moving in the direction of setting aside a significant amount of money towards trails, because that has always been the number one issue that the residents have always asked for. So, I don't know the exact year, but it was prior to 2008. We were putting significant amounts of money aside each year to total $250,000 so that we could participate in a trails program. And unfortunately, 2009 hit, and we took that money and paid our bills to keep us sustainable. So we have to start all over again, basically. And I think what Mr. Kishnick has done here is kick the door back open again, and because of what we constantly hear from the residents, we're trying to reclaim that important issue. It doesn't look like much when you start, and we know that it takes an awful lot of that money to get that going. But I think it is something we'll discuss along the way, and if we can connect, I think that's in the best interest of us and everyone else.
Well, in the region.
In the region.
Just, Mayor and Mr. Rest of Council, so you also understand, before those funds were transferred, the city also engaged a group of consultants, and there is a Pathways and Trail Plan, very, very extensive one that was prepared, but when the crash happened, it was pretty much set aside, and what we've brought that back forward. Kurt is always looking at it, and we're gonna try to incorporate it in with Parks and Recreation Plan. And it's very extensive, and if you want copies, we can provide it to you.
That'd probably be a good idea, but I think it's a point well taken that we need to get going on that again, because I think it is important to the city. And this is a start, from what I, Mr. Kishner.
Yeah, well, I would just say two things. It's definitely a start to put it back on the radar at no significant level, but it is a significant conversation piece. Roads are number one.
Right,
and-
yes.
And, you know, when you look at this, I think we proved as a collective group that roads are number one, and we're willing to do what it takes for roads. Now, there is a Parks Committee that's set up that Kurt works with and Elaine works with, right, that the plan, and Mark, that the plan goes through. It is a perfect opportunity for that group to have something to sink their teeth into and go to work on, right? And they have the basis of a solid plan to start from as the foundation that Mark talked about. So, you know, they're looking for something, not just to meet once a week, and there's something to really start to put together.
Any other questions about capital? Good job.
Thank you. Now, this is a new part of the program, so I hope you like this, and this is really meant to shed a lot of light in a few major areas. So we're going to start this with Jeanette, Gary, and Tom. Not Jerry.
Hello and good evening. I'm going to start talking about staffing. And on Monday, we kind of peeked into some of the departments and saw some of the staffing trends department by department. I'm going to step back so we can widen our look to citywide staffing and I'm presenting a chart that's similar to the one that the police department presented on Monday. It shows the red line, the top line, which is our total budgeted positions for full-time positions citywide, and then our blue line, which is our actual employees. So you can see that, not so surprisingly, we've had a gap between the budgeted positions and the filled positions. It's quite significant at times. I think the widest gap is 53 positions. Right now, our gap, if you look to the far right, we've got 323 budgeted positions, and we have 305 full-time employees right now. So that gap is 18. Next, again, we talked about this a little bit on Monday as well. Position, or department by department, the positions that we're seeking in this year's budget. At the top, highlighted in blue, are our part-time positions that we're looking to transition to full-time. And at the bottom, it's 3 positions at the top, and at the bottom, it's the 6 brand-new full-time positions that we look to add to the budget. So that begs the obvious question. We've got a gap of 18 vacancies that we haven't filled, and we want to add 9 more. So how are we going to do that? Well, obviously, we've been examining our processes to determine what we can do to narrow that gap. So, in preparation for the presentation today, I took out a nice heavyweight piece of bond paper. I straightened it up real nice, and I sat down at the typewriter in Human Resources, and I made you this list of what we used to do.
How we used to do it.
That's how we used to do it. So what we used to do, unfortunately, created a lot of delays in our process, which could very much add to our time to fill our positions and add to that gap as time goes on. So we were doing things like maintaining tight constraints with our posting dates and not evaluating applications until all the applications were in, the posting had closed. We were conducting only face-to-face interviews. We were doing a great deal of excessive testing as far as written tests and typing tests. We were very paper-intensive and had processes that didn't allow us to take immediate action after interviews. So, what are we doing now? We've looked at those processes. We've also been fortunate enough for the first blue box to take place. Our Human Resources Department is now 100% staffed for productivity. This is the first piece of the puzzle to get us to move that gap down. So frankly, more people, we can do more. So what are we doing more? We're examining our processes and making them more streamlined and making best use of our time. We're not waiting till a posting closes to evaluate the applications. We're acting dynamically on the positions, the applications when they come in. We're using very basic techniques like telephone pre-screening to, again, act on the applications and reduce our burden of excessive face-to-face interviews. We're eliminating written and typing tests whenever that's possible, and we're using a less paper-intensive process when we select candidates. We also have the advantage of utilizing technology and collaborating with other departments. So obviously we're using a lot of email. We are advertising our postings online. We're using our email notification subscription system to send those out. We've streamlined our process to get job announcements online. We're using techniques like LinkedIn and other online sources, monster.com when it's appropriate. So the technology, and finally, yes, very importantly, we work very closely with the police department on their positions because there's parts of the processes that they take over. And I'm very proud to tell you that we're succeeding. Our average recruitment time, which is measured from job posting, job offer, has decreased. So we have shorter timelines. Our output is still high. You'd think, well, we've got shorter timelines, you might not be doing as much. Nope. Since January, so this is less than 4 months, Human Resources Department has hired 5 full-time, 35 part-time and seasonal, and promoted 4 existing employees, full-time employees. That's amazing output, if I say so myself. So our shorter timelines, our high output is indeed making it happen. And we're looking forward into the future to continue to track this information, to report back as we achieve and continue to narrow the gap. Any questions before I turn it over?
Thank you. Mayor and Council, I'm going to address some of the specific issues along with Lieutenant Tom Gordon regarding the police department. Lieutenant Gordon is in charge of staff inspections and hiring within the police department, so he can address this with a lot of detail. You have to look at hiring in police service from a lot of levels. So we start at a national level. At a national level, I just brought along some of the literature. There's a lot of professional literature on it. There's a lot of studies that are done on hiring and retaining police personnel. It's an issue across the United States. At a statewide level, it's a constant topic at conferences and with my peers when we go to conferences and talk about it. Hiring and retention of quality police personnel. It's constantly talked about. When you get into a regional level, we're competing with other police departments in the area that have gone through the same problems that we went through with the downsizing, and now they're in a position of also trying to get higher and retain quality personnel. So we're competing for the same people. At a local level, which is what you're all concerned with, we have to address the issues, go through all the things the way we've done them in the past, and bring it into the future. So we don't want to bore you with all the detail. We're willing to talk about all the detail, but this isn't the time and place for it. We can talk about it all you want any other time. You can call, we can discuss it through. So, this is meant to illustrate the fact Troy PD's been around since 1952. Just like the embroidery technology changed, everything's changed. We do things differently. We got quality people working on this process, but we have to look at the process and update the process. There's an old way of doing things. We've gone through that. We'll discuss it. No, we're not going to bore you with all that. What we're going to do is we're going to go through, and Lieutenant Gordon's going to go through what we're doing now, because that's what's really important and germane to this.
Thank you. Good evening. The issue at hand is filling this void between the red and blue line. This is going to be basically how I spent my summer vacation. We hope to have our new hiring list in place the first or second week in July. We've already done some steps behind the scenes to make sure that the process goes smooth as soon as we have that list in hand. We talked a little bit on Monday, if you recall this chart. The blue lines represent the police officers that we've hired since I've been here last year, since we had our study session last year. And the yellow and the red are representing those positions that we've lost due to retirements and separations. I want to give a little bit more detail on what some of the separations are. There might have been some questions about that. We can usually predict pretty well when someone's going to be retired. Some people try to hold it a little close to the chest, but we can tell, particularly when they put their papers in, we have at least 4 to 6 weeks that we know that they're going to be retiring. The separations can sneak up on us a little bit. Some examples of separations that we've had over the last year, we had an officer that wanted to be a stay-at-home parent, did not come back from medical leave. We had a couple officers that went to federal law enforcement agencies. We had one officer that we grabbed from Sterling Heights when he was laid off. He got recalled by Sterling Heights. He sat down, looked at the figures, and felt it was in his best interest to go back to his original department. And we've had a couple officers that have simply decided to get out of law enforcement and go into the private sector. Some of the changes that we made to the hiring process this year that we hope to make things go a little smoother and maybe make sure candidates are a little more better fit for us. For the first time in about 20 years, we're going to have a Troy supervisor actually sit on the interview panel. We want to make sure that the candidates are not just good at interviewing, but they're good at interviewing, and they're also going to be a good fit for our culture. We're making the applicants fill out their background package. For those of you who've seen it, it's about 34 pages. That is part of the hiring process. That's going to save us about 3 weeks' time on the front end. They have to have the hiring packet done before they get their interview. We went from 2 part-time investigators to 5 part-time background investigators, and Chief has reassigned 3 officers who work full-time to my section. They're going to be working full-time on doing nothing but background investigations until we get up to our full staffing. And then, very similar to what Jeanette spoke of, we're getting away from snail mail. We're doing more face-to-face interviews, phone contacts, and getting heavily into email as far as our forms and references. And Chief and I can answer any questions they might have.
Question about hiring process?
So, Mayor, last year, remember, the conversation was, how do we get the HR department to get these positions filled? And at the time, they were operating at about half speed because of the transitions in the office. And Jeanette, when did you become the HR director officially? Right before Christmas, so you can see what's happened in a very short period of time. She had to assume the director role, get two new people in the office, and still show some success, and now have a plan for the future. So it's quite remarkable, actually, and it was a conversation last year, but I think when we're talking about this in 12 months, we'll be quite pleased with the results.
I think it sounds good from a council standpoint to fill vacancies, because those add to fund balance issues. And instead of setting money aside for vacant positions, it'd be nice to be able to have a more accurate depiction of what the actual fund balance is gonna be from, rather than vacancies. Because I think in the last 2 or 3 years, it's the vacancy rate has just added tremendously to our fund balance issue.
And it's not sustainable
It's not sustainable.
over time.
Sounds good.
And so now the next part is on health insurance, and it also has a vacancy factor that you're going to see how vacancies impact the city, and then how a changing workforce changes the city. And what I've asked is Tom and Jeanette to talk about the different plans that we have. We're not going into the details of every plan. This is more of a macro view of the plans and the units, the collective bargaining units, and where they are or spread across, and then how they contribute to a financial impact on the city's general fund or all the funds. So with that backdrop, we want to kind of give you what's happening out there, so. Who's starting out? Jeanette?
Okay. Yeah. So, overview of our health insurance plans. I think you're all pretty well aware of it because we've talked about it a lot, but we have the Community Blue PPO plan, we have HAP and Blue Care Network. These are our 3 major plans. Primary difference that you may not be aware of between the Community Blue plan, the one that we're trying to transition all of our employee groups to, and the HAP and Blue Care Network, is that this is a self-funded insurance plan, where HAP and Blue Care Network are both considered fully insured plans. So what's a self-funded plan? That's a plan where the employer, the city in this case, pays the exact amount of the claims incurred by the employees and their dependents. The other plans are a more traditional insurance plan, the way you'd think of your car insurance or home insurance, where you're going to pay your rate times however many people you're covering and for as long as you need to. But the Community Blue plan, changes in claims have a direct effect on what we pay because we pay the actual claim amount. So we end up using illustrative rates for a number of purposes because we do need something to compare, but we're paying the claims. Second set of boxes is the groups that are in our plans. The classified and exempt, AFSCME, MAP, TCOA, TSA, and TFSOA are the groups that are in our Community Blue. All of those, with the exception to the TCOA and the TFSOA, who are also in the other plans. So all of these in the first box, except for those 2, are exclusively in Community Blue. Every member is in it. Every member is in the plan that we can affect how much we pay by affecting how many claims we have. So the other groups, TCOA, TFSOA, they still both have access to Blue Care Network, and those are the contracts that are expiring at the end of June this year, and the TPOA is expiring next year. They still have access to the fully funded insurance plans.
Councilman Fleming.
Just a question. You look at this Community Blue and self-funded, you say we're paying the actual claim, but do we have a stop loss?
Yes, we do.
So we have a stop loss, so that if there was catastrophic problems, we are insured with the stop loss policy to protect us in the event of a major.
Absolutely right.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
Well, I can pick this one up. This is one of my favorite slides, and it shows the progress that we made as directed, right, from city council, right, of moving people to the community blue plan. Again, we're comparing 2013 in the blue to 2014, and you can see a significant shift from the BCN plans and those HAP plans, those premium-based plans, into our self-funded community blue plan. You know, it should be noted, again, as we said, it's claims-based. So when we budget, right, we have to budget using something, right? And we use illustrative rates, as we've told you, right? We also have to have something then, because employees pay on their premiums, they contribute to their health care. And so we have to have a basis for them to pay, and they pay based on, if you're part of the community blue plan, on whatever that illustrative rate is. If you're part of BCN or HAP, it's gonna be at whatever percentage of that premium is. It should also be noted that, you know, PA 152, when we talked about the opt-in, opt-out, you know, 80-20 and hard cap plans, they direct per instruction, if you're self-funded, you have to use, quote, these illustrative rates in determining the 80-20 or the hard cap rates. So it has nothing to do with, right, what we're actually paying. It has absolutely everything to do with what these illustrative rates are. Okay, so I think I've covered everything on. Yes.
In the non-category, is that people that are covered by their spouses?
You know what, I didn't change. This is one that, right, that are either on, and they're taking, I'm sorry. We talked about that. Yes, absolutely right. That they're taking they're taking the payment of $2,400 a year because they're covered under another plan.
Right.
The basics of this slide is to show you gave us a directive.
Yes.
Of those we could affect, and you can see from the, you can see how it's working.
It is.
It's working, and everybody's moving in the right direction. Remember, and there's an unintended, there's a consequence that's a positive that, you know, we talked about, but it doesn't get talked about a lot anymore, and that's not cost. That's uniformity of plans. So we don't have all these plans. If we move everyone into one plan, it's a lot easier to administer.
Yep.
And that's something we don't even talk about anymore, but we're moving in that direction as well.
Very good.
So I'll move it for you, Tom.
Great, thank you. So this was an interesting slide when I put it together. Basically, the red line is how we budget for healthcare. So typically, our healthcare over the last few years has been around in the $5 million range, okay? So it takes, here's a person, and either this is the coverage they had last year, here's the new rates, multiplies it out. And if you're part of the PPO, here's the illustrative rate times whatever plan you are, and carries that forward. Then I've plotted what is our actual costs. And so our actual costs are, you know, between $3.5, $4 million a year. So what is that, that delta? Well, that delta to me is, hey, these are claims, right? And these are illustrative rates. So what's it telling me is that our experience in claims is less than what these illustrative rates would pencil out at. So what this also tells me means that a healthy employee is a less costly employee also, right? So then I said, well, you know what, if there's this difference in here, this felt, maybe it's just because we have that void that we talked about, employees, right? So I looked, what is our vacancy factor through here? And so I plotted that out. But come to find out, boy, that change, really, there's not much difference, right? And so why would that be? Because when we budget for our new employees, typically we budget them on the community blue plan. But so what this tells me, at least, and I'm open to any suggestions, is that even though we fill the vacancy, right, they're not, they're healthy and they're not going in and needing the claims, so it keeps my costs down. So whether I fill the vacancy or not, if they're on the community blue PPO, which is only claims based, right, it doesn't necessarily increase my cost or increase it significantly. At least that's what I'm getting out of this.
Makes sense to everybody. So we want healthy employees. We want to move everyone to the community blue PPO. We want to keep them healthy, and we will benefit from that. Now, here's something we've not talked about, at least in the last year. And I look at Councilmember Teets, because remember, he asked me, when are we going to budget correctly, and here's another one of those areas that we wanna, total transparency, we wanna point out, this is the budget. This is the actual. There's a gap. So guess what? When you're budgeting 5 million, spending 3.5 to 4 million, that contributes to fund balance. So again, I wanted everyone to be aware of what's going on when you really drill down into the numbers. That fund balance is a product of a lot of our strategic planning, processing, implementation, and success.
Again, so obviously, keeping healthcare costs down is something that's of interest to all of us. And as I started discussing on the first slide, this process will help us keep the costs down. If we are able to implement a successful wellness program, we'll have healthier employees, we'll have fewer claims, and the city will pay less. Our Community Blue Plan is the self-funded plan where we pay by claims. So that's the plan where a wellness program will impact the bottom line. And as an aside, my item on the bottom, I recently read an article that said, and it's estimated that 25% of healthcare costs are attributed to modifiable health risks. And modifiable health risks are your weight, your smoking, your healthy eating habits, your stress level, the things that wellness plans address. So, I'm going to start in the center of this one. So in 2012-13, we had no funds in the budget for wellness. We were able to offer something, thanks to Cindy Stewart for coordinating it, and the generous donation of time and talent of Steve Pilata and Colleen Mott. It's a free exercise class for any city employees that wanted to. Okay, no cost. Now, we continue to do that, and we build on. In 2013-14, we had $1,000 in the budget, and we're working on using that, and we've put it toward, so far, a program, a Desk Active program that is a pilot program. It is an ergonomically focused program to get sedentary employees to stretch and take breaks, and that thereby reduce the stresses and carpal tunnel and things like that for sedentary desk job employees. We also have 2 other events that we've been doing as far as healthy eating. So that's on $1,000. We pop it up to $5,000, which is what we have requested in the budget this year, and now we'll be able to do all those things and be able to make comprehensive wellness programs that'll work along with our health insurance plan that may have rewards and incentives to get those modifiable health risks in check. And we might even be able to address physical and mental wellness. Bigger impact. I think it's the right way to go. I hope you agree.
Questions on that? That concludes the health insurance.
What does that entail, free fitness classes for employees? Is that at the community center, or?
Go ahead.
It's retirees and employees can all go free Mondays and Wednesdays, 5 to 6 o'clock.
At the community center?
Yep.
Okay, great.
You're welcome.
And you may not think that you're a paid employee, but you are a paid employee. You can participate.
All right. And I like salad, so. On that note.
You should have seen Salad Day. Anyway.
Well, on that note, I got a fantastic presentation for you, I'm told. So Troy Library. So this list represents our major projects that we focused on for this year, and also what we want to continue to focus on and build on for next year. You all received a copy of the handout that we're doing for staff training on financial resources. Murray Feldman is coming to do the keynote for us, and then we're going to talk about investment resources. That's an example. I wanted you to have a copy of the handout because that's an example of the kind of training that we want to take into the community, to local businesses, also to either bring residents into the library or go to homeowners associations or go places where we can introduce people and businesses to the resources that the Troy Library offers. I don't know that Murray Feldman will consent to travel with us on that, but we are going to give it our best shot. So I just wanted to show that to you so you could see an example of that. The next three, we have Books and Brews. We're taking the library on the road to Granite City and offering a book club at Granite City. The next three slides are of library partnerships. I'm not gonna read them to you, but I do hope that you'll take a look at them in the handout. Yes, we can talk about that later if you like. But please look at the partnerships because I'm very proud of the depth and the breadth that they represent. I mean, they basically cover all aspects of Troy, between partnerships with residents, with businesses, with nonprofits, and within city departments as well. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about those specifically later on or at any time. So what we've really been focusing on is prioritizing technology for increased connections. What does that mean? Well, what that means is everybody wants to see more more technology as much as possible in about a million different ways from the Troy Library. So our technology plan, our brand, our website, our social media strategy, and our newsletter focus on connecting the library to the community. Projects like the Loanable e-reader program and the 3M Cloud Library focus on bringing technology to the people. The Loanable e-reader program has been in demand. People want to try before they buy. So they could come to the library, check out a Kindle, check out a Nook, check out an iPad, take it home, read an ebook on it, decide which format they like, decide if it's something they want to pursue. It gives us an opportunity to demonstrate how the library can provide them with ebooks. You don't have to buy ebooks from Amazon. You can download them through the library. We have a service now called Overdrive. It's great and it's very popular, but it's also slightly cumbersome. The 3M Cloud Library, which you generously approved the funding of a couple months back, provides an easier interface. It provides more titles that we can make available to the patrons, and ebooks are just as in demand as print copies, so we can make more copies available to patrons as well. So, in terms of marketing and technology initiatives, we have developed a unique brand, and you can see it. I'm gonna mess this up. In the corner here, TPL Never Stop Learning, and Andrew's gonna talk with you about that. We've improved our internal marketing processes so we can get our message out more quickly and also more effectively. And again, we're trying to do the best we can to communicate through technology. So I'm gonna turn it over to Andrew for the specifics.
Kathy, good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you. As Kathy mentioned, one of my charges was working with the team at the library to develop a unique brand. And one of the ways that we did that was to talk with staff. We did patron surveys. We got input from volunteers in the various volunteer organizations that work with the Troy Public Library. And one thing that was made clear to us was that it was about more than books. The idea of libraries as book warehouses is what makes people think of libraries as antiquated. So we tried to stray away from that. And then we also wanted it to be a call to action. So we came up with the tagline of Never Stop Learning. And as you can see here, a nice little footnote to myself. I was going to put pictures there, but now you can just have this image of me doing the American Sign Language symbol for learning every time you go through this PowerPoint presentation, because I'm sure it'll be humorous. But this orange node up here is actually a representation of the American Sign Language symbol for learning, which is taking your hand and actually grabbing information and placing it into your head. So we thought that that was a great representation of the mantra of Never Stop Learning. She mentioned we're developing a new website. We wanted to develop it and maintain it internally. One, so we can have more control of it, and two, to save money, so it will cost less. And then we wanted to also design it with the user in mind, using best practices and web standards. I'm going to show you a couple pages from it real quick here. It's not completed, but if you'll permit me. As you can see, we have a more modern design. We have things like a sticky header, but the cool thing about it, this is very awkward to navigate here, but it's also a responsive design. So when it's accessed with mobile devices, it actually shifts the content, so there's a consistency there. We don't have to maintain two separate websites, a website and a mobile website. So And then I'll show you the homepage. When we developed it, we discovered that there was 4 things that people really like to do when they visit our website. They want to search the catalog, they want to go to their account, download things, search the databases, or figure out what we're doing at the library. In conjunction with the new website, we're using landing pages in our print marketing materials, and that's to bridge the gap between print materials, posters, flyers, get people to the correct page quickly without having to navigate through the entire site. The internal marketing process improvements have allowed us to create a blog that's run by the librarians, so that'll help us with content marketing. It'll help us provide relevant content to the public. We've done a formal engagement strategy for social media, which we've seen produce great results as far as engagement. We have an e-newsletter that now we're focusing more. We're working on targeting specific issues that people care about, new releases, books, DVDs, whatever they're interested in, and delivering that information versus the general form of information. So with that, I'll pass it back to Kathy.
So I have to take this opportunity to thank you because you allowed me to hire him. And that's, as well as Anna, our technology specialist, and that has clearly made us be able to move leaps and bounds in our goals and in implementing the strategic plan. So thank you very much. You also approved the addition of the teen librarian position last year, which has been a huge success. And so what we are including in this year's budget is a contract position, so not a permanent part of the library's budget. We want to give this a try. A tween librarian position. And what this position will do is connect with the 9 to 13-year-old age group to work on relationships, programs, and collections. We know that one of your goals has been to work more closely with the Troy schools, and we think that this will help with that goal. We also think that it'll help with the goal of keeping young people in Troy, because we have a lot of programs for children from birth to elementary school. We have now a lot of programs for teens. We have a lot of programs for adults. This was the age group that's missing. So we want to bring them in and do what we can to foster that relationship with them, transition them to the team. So the Troy Library is really your library for life. And we think that this is going to be a good fit for us, but again, it is a contract position. It is not a permanent part of the library's budget. We're going to give it a try, see how it goes, and I'll bring back a report to you next year if you approve this. So it wouldn't be a budget presentation without the budget. So there's the library's revenue, the operating capital expenditures. We have some capital expenditures this year. Really, this is the first year in 3 years that we've had capital expenditures. We're doing some building repairs. I think I pointed some areas out to you on the tour that we took a couple months ago. And this is also the year that the long-awaited drive-up book drop will be implemented. So that is represented in that figure as well. So just as the city manager Kishnick mentioned, the proposed budget does cover the 4th year of the 5-year millage. It's a continuation budget. The millage expires June 30th of 2016, and we anticipate the discussions to take place about library funding in the fall of this year. So that was my presentation. I hope it was fantastic, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Was Councilman Fleming.
Very good, Kathy. But as we're seeing the technology shifts and more e-books, when you're budgeting now, are you budgeting less for actual hard copy books?
Yes.
And how much less are you budgeting compared to what you're putting in technology?
I would say we're probably budgeting about 10% less. The 3M Cloud Library was paid for out of the Solomon donation. That gets us up and running on the program, and it gets us, I'm sorry, I don't have the number, but a substantial number of titles. What sometimes people don't realize about ebooks is the library can own one title of an ebook, but that doesn't mean it's unlimited users. So if we own the title, it works just like a copy of a book. If we have one copy of the ebook, you get it.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 of you don't get it all at the same time.
Oh, really?
Yes. So there's licensing, and a lot depends on what the publishers make available to libraries. There's this huge debate raging right now about standardizing access, because Random House does it one way, Penguin does it another way, HarperCollins does it yet another way, and the American Library Association and it's just a significant lobbying effort to the publishers to try to standardize this. So that's why if you see a title for, $4 on Amazon, it might cost the library $20, and that'd be a good deal for us. So there's pricing differences between what the consumer would pay and what a library would pay. There are licensing issues, things like that. So we are putting more money into ebooks, but it doesn't necessarily equate dollar for dollar to a print book.
With ebooks, there's no fines, right? Because that just cuts off after
Correct.
a certain amount of time. So how does that fit into, I don't know, how much do fines contribute to the bottom line of the library? So is there an offset there somewhere?
That's a great question. That's something that I watch very carefully, because as ebooks rise and print books and and let's talk about, we're talking about books, but, there's other materials at the library. But as ebook circulation rises, print circulation decreases, the fines are something to keep your eye on. The library currently generates about a little over $100,000 in fine revenue. That's held pretty stable over the last few years. We've debated in our budget sessions. I keep it at 100,000, and it brings in about 104, and City Manager Kishnick makes me bump it to 104, and I always get a little worried, but we've been meeting that. But it's so it has been stable.
That's because I pay the most in fines. Anybody knows my fine. Real quick can tell you how delinquent I am. So I think
You're a great
I
hire.
guarantee you'll generate it.
But I do, I get worried, because I think, whoa, what if we don't make that $4,000, you'll be all mad at me. So, I'm keeping an eye on it. Right now it's stable, but it is something to watch for the future. One thing to keep in mind with fines is if everybody returned their materials on time, the fines would go away too. So, the fines are a really significant source of revenue. The library generates about $250,000 outside of the millage, and the fines are about $100,000 of that.
Tom, did you?
I was just gonna say, it represents about 3% of our revenue budget.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councilwoman Holder?
I just want to say, I applaud the tween idea. I think, having raised kids in the community and been real involved with the library, they hit that age, and there's a disconnect that happens, and one of mine still ended out using the library in high school, and the other one in fits and starts, quite frankly. And I think that tween connection, that bridge would be good. And my assumption is that you'll be connecting with the school district and the middle school. There are needs that they have in a collaboration that I think could be beneficial, mutually beneficial. And it's such an awesome team, those media professionals. So that's a given, I'm sure that's going on. But that's what I would hope would happen. So we keep growing that learning resource, just like the logo says.
Where this was, the idea for that was born out of the teens have, for the last few years, under the direction of our teen librarian, participated in middle school murder mystery night, and they dress up as characters and are killed for the benefit of the middle schoolers who have to come in and solve the mystery. So this has been going on for a couple of years, and a lot of the middle schoolers want to do the activities that the teens are on, but there's no formal place for them to do that. So our teen librarian was really advocating for this idea, as was our youth services librarian, because they do programs for this age group, but they don't have a formal place or a teen advisory board, a tween advisory board, that sort of thing. And you're absolutely right. We take them through about 3rd, 4th grade, and then we want them back as teens. Well, we always want them, but we don't offer a lot of formal ways to get involved. This is an opportunity to partner with the middle schools. I think, the middle schools and the conversations that I've had and that some of my staff have had with the Troy School District are thrilled by this idea. And I think that this is a good way to involve kids. And I think there's ways that we could partner with Youth Assistance and Community Coalition in this regard as well, so.
Questions? Great presentation.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Another fantastic presentation of the night is our marketing initiatives. And it's a nice segue from the library, they've spent a lot of time working in the library, because Andrew's marketing position is half in the library and half citywide, working with Cindy Stewart. So we asked them to put together a presentation on on what our marketing initiatives are and how are we connecting with people and what avenues are we using, so.
So as Brian mentioned, I am 20 hours a week with the city, 20 hours a week with the library. A unique thing that comes out of that is I'm developing brands for both of them. So what we did when Kathy and Cindy and Brian and I met about this is we decided to use certain things that you see I have the library city brand relationship. All the details about a brand, all the font guidelines, the nitty gritty stuff will be duplicated for the city. So not only will there be consistency between the library, the city, Troy Family Aquatic Center, the community center, so it'll look good, but it also saves staff time. We're not doing work over and over and over again for a brand. Now obviously they won't be exactly the same, but again, we're saving staff time there. Our why, for those of you, I think everyone, who was the odd man out at the retreat? Sorry. We're using our why as a guide.
What was his name again?
We're using our why as a guideline for this brand, and really as a guideline for the city going forward. So that'll help us create consistency across all departments. Another initiative we're working on is really forming connections with residents and businesses. And these are just some of the highlights. There's obviously more, but the focus groups, the Troy Story focus groups that we just completed, we've begun facilitating homeowner association quarterly meetings. Mark and Glenn are working on a real estate forum for the master plan. We've got the Big Beaver Advanced Mobility Symposium coming up and various online tools that we're going to be starting to use to better connect with residents and businesses within the city. The Transit Center, obviously a big issue for Troy. There's going to be a dedicated marketing plan for when that gets off the ground that Cindy, myself, and several other key staff members will put together. E-newsletter, again, much like with the library, we're going to be more focused. We're going to do a better job of targeting communications to groups of people. The Troy Family Aquatic Center, I have to credit the recreation staff. They've been very willing to follow recommendations that we've put out. They're forming connections with resident groups, the homeowners associations. They've developed, in conjunction with Cindy and I, a web and social media strategy. And then also the Troy MJR Theater. We're working on doing in-theater advertising for when that opens up. The message, obviously Troy, we provide excellent service and we keep taxes low. We want to keep our safest city designation. I know Chief Mayor will agree with that. I have to applaud the council for allocating the money to fix the county roads, recognizing that as an issue. And then we have the lowest millage of the Southeast Michigan cities. We're going to work on automating important information. I'm not sure if you've known this, but IT and the Department of Public Works did a great job with their snow removal map, so you can see what sections of the city have been plowed in real time. So information like that, it's very pertinent. Residents want to know it, and they want to know it now. So we're working on automating things like that. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Cindy.
Good evening. And as Andrew has said, the website, you knew that we did a redesign very recently, so we made sure our website was, we could use it on smartphones. We're doing more with landing pages, just like we did with Troy Road Rocks. You can get right to that. We make it easier. Same with TFAC, so we're going to do a lot more of that. Online payments, make that easy for the residents. Anything they need. We hear from people. How do you find this? Where do I get this? So we can move things around and make it so that people can find the things they really need. City Hall, starting with the library, doing more wayfinding. People, how do you get on our campus? How do you find what you need? So that's all going to be part of our branding. And what came out of the retreat, as you knew, they talked about the wayfinding, entrances to the city, our signage, the branding. As you get into Troy, we want people to know they're in Troy and to really, take notice that this is Troy. Same with social media. We're trying to do a lot more with communicating. Andrew, since he's been here, has been doing a lot with Twitter, and I've been trying to up the Facebook, and we're happy that our Twitter followers, that's been up 16% since February, interactions up 10%. Trying to use a hashtag everywhere so people can, they'll go right to it, and then we can have that interaction. Facebook, our likes have been up 40% since September. We had a real connect with the residents over the winter. We tried to let them know what was going on. Kurt let us know. So, I mean, they feel, they like us, but they appreciate the city more when we tell them what's going on. Where are we? And that all helped out with IT and DPW doing that roadmap. But we can give them updates. Storm, this is closed, put it out there. So our engagement is up 32% since September. Same with Tumblr, Pinterest, and Instagram. It's another target. We can target different ages with that one. Content creation, as in the library, we're doing a staff blog. We've got a content team. We're all meeting together. So covering all kind of disciplines, we can get that out. Everyone, all kind of internal communication as well, so then becomes external. Everyone knows what everyone's doing. Makes for better customer service. And just a reminder, next year is our 60th anniversary of the city. Some of you were around for the 50th, way back when. But our 60th coming up, and we're celebrating our journey since 55. So we are very busy already working to coordinate a year-long celebration next year. That's going to involve the library, the community center, recreation, nature center, historic village, all that historical pieces, and a lot of community partners. So that's going to kind of be in half a budget and then the next budget. So we want to just let you know that's coming up and get our community very involved to celebrate where Troy's been and where we're going. And I think that's it.
Questions? Just a question, do we have a timetable on the branding, when you think that we're looking at having a discussion on that? There were some discussions about the signs and all of that. Do we have a timetable on that?
Probably within the next, now that the retreat's over, we were waiting for our retreat and our starts with Y, so I'd say within the next 3 months.
Trying to time the state of the city this year, so, that would be something that may be important to have as a showcase. Any other questions about it? Can we take a break here? I hate to do it to Don. I know he's anxiously ready to go.
He's been here all day.
But,
Even all night.
I think it should be a good time to take a 10-minute break.
Before we break, could we I know the retreat keeps coming up in this last presentation, and I think Andrew made a reference to Mr.
Yes, he did.
Pennington.
Thank you,
and
Andrew.
I didn't know if you wanted to address that, but what I thought, I do have a section in here on Troy Jeopardy, so you guys want to get back in the teams, or do you just want to accept the fact that our team won?
There was a protest.
No, not
There
accepting.
was a protest.
I'm sorry?
There was a protest.
There was a recount on Monday morning.
Oh, was it?
We have consensus here that you did not win. Let's take a 10-minute break.
Put the Starbucks.
Should've worn purple tonight, everybody had purple on.
I wore my gloves.
We know why you.
Yeah. But not the I'm wrong.
It's a royal color.
Okay, the TVs are on.
Thank you.
I've been waiting for this one.
The guy.
For the golf course.
Yes.
So we have one of the best golf course general managers in the country, in Don Tiller. And if you haven't golfed either of the courses, or if you have, you know that. So, and two of the best golf courses around, that he's gonna show you some of the winter impacts. But first, what I thought as an educational piece, many of you maybe were involved in the contract originally in 2010, maybe you weren't. How does it work? Again, like health insurance, does everybody know how that contract with Billy Casper works? We know it's a good contract and it's working, but how does it work? And so that's how the initial part of this presentation is going to start out. And then Don is going to give you some of the effects of winter and then what he's doing going forward. So Don?
Well, thank you, everybody, for inviting me here tonight, and for letting me see if I still remembered how to tie a tie. Good, came out okay. Thank you. Before I get onto the presentation, I wanted to take the opportunity to say a couple things on behalf of Billy Casper Golf and on behalf of myself. I want to reiterate, if for those of you that weren't around initially and haven't been around golf, and talk to any of us that are involved in golf since you've been on council, just how important this relationship is with Billy Casper Golf when it comes to the city of Troy. We manage right now about 150 golf courses. We're the #1 manager in the country, #2 in the world. It equates to about 115 to 120, I forget what the actual number is, contracts with homeowners associations, municipalities, private golf clubs, resorts, what have you. Getting into the state of Michigan, one of the great untapped golf management opportunities in the country, was extremely important for us as a company. And we really appreciate the opportunity to come here and try to apply our trades here for the city of Troy. It's been very successful on our end. Hopefully you guys believe that it's been successful in your case. Since we started in 2010, we have began other relationships with 3 other municipalities in the state of Michigan, and that clearly would not have happened if we hadn't been here in Troy. So on behalf of the company, I just want to thank you for that opportunity and the continued opportunity to work with you moving forward. On a personal note, I appreciate what Brian said. I don't know how true that might be, but when I do sit around with my colleagues throughout the company with Billy Casper Golf, and we talk about the different opportunities and resources, relationships with the clients, I have a pretty good gig. I probably have one of the top 10 GM jobs in the company, and that's a reflection on you with the city of Troy and the facilities that you've turned over to us to operate. So, thanks. All right, as Brian said, first thing he asked me to do is just give some highlights about the contract. We started this relationship, effective date was June 15th, 2010. That was the day the transition team showed up. I showed up on July 6th, and they all scattered within 24 hours, and I've been here ever since. The initial term was 4 years, which was initially scheduled in at the end of June this year. The second term, which was Billy Casper Golf's option, was for an additional 4 years, which we have already exercised. So we are, now the contract extends till June 30th, 2018. As an aside, it's a great plum for me personally and all my bosses if and when we decide to extend those terms. And so I just planted that seed. That would be great. One of the unique aspects of this contract is you guys have a guarantee of profitability from us, which is really unheard of in third-party management contracts. I believe that that number, 265,000, was the average profitability that you'd shown in the previous 3 or 4 years, or maybe it was the best, I don't know what it was. But the net operating income, the profitability for golf, however, the term in the contract is net operating income. It's basically the net profit that we do from operations. If perchance we don't actually perform to that amount, Casper Golf's going to write the city of Troy a check to make up the difference. That has not been an issue since we've been here, by the way. Our management fees are paid as part of our operations budget. You can see a slide here shortly. We'll have them broken out, but those fees are included in the overall expense line. And they are applicable to each golf course. Each course pays the same fee. They increase annually by the lesser of the increase in the cost of living index, or 3%. The first year we were here, it went up 3%. Every year after that, it has gone by the 2 point something or 1 point something, whatever it might be. We also have an incentive compensation built into the contract. The Casper Golf receives 20% of the total revenues in any calendar year exceeding $2.25 million, capped at 20% of the total management fee. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to one of the financial slides. All right here. So this is just a snapshot of Sanctuary Lakes financials for the last 2 fiscal years, where we stood in our estimate at the end of February, and what the proposed budget for the next fiscal year is. And Sylvan's Glen is underneath. They are operated as 2 separate entities. And this is just an indication of the incentive fees that we received in the year since we've been here. We did not hit incentive in 2011. In 2012, that's the cap. We actually maxed out everything because that was a great weather year. And last year, that was the incentive payment that was just recently approved. You can see essentially the effect that weather has on us as a golf course. All these revenue numbers, all the bottom line net operating numbers are pretty much relative to the weather that we've had. We had a great weather year, and we had a really good year. In 2013, it wasn't quite so good. Revenue was down a little bit. Profitability was down, but still significantly higher than the guarantee. And we're estimating this year our revenue will be slightly up, but we've had significant expenses gone up this season, which we'll talk about in a second. And this is just to combine to give you a little better, so you don't have to do that math in your head. So this year, we're projecting profitability in the $350,000 range, and budget for next year, which would be a continuation of kind of our expected improvements as we go along, ignoring where this is going to end up, 500,000. I think all that's very achievable with good weather, because we're such a weather-dependent business. Okay, I also wanted to talk a lot about what happened this summer. For those of you who've driven past Sylvan Glen Golf Course and looked out the window, you may have been appalled at what you've seen since the snow went away. There's been a significant winter kill event in Michigan over this past winter, and we use the word winter kill literally. We have a lot of dead grass, which I'm going to show you in a second, at Sylvan Glen Golf Course. I'm just going to spend 5 minutes here to explain a little bit what happened. The primary culprit to all this was the ice storm of December 21st and 22nd. If we had not had this ice storm, we wouldn't have any of this damage. Well, we'd have some snow mold like we have every winter, but we wouldn't see what we've seen. So what happened? We had an ice storm back there in December, which put about 1 inch to 3 inches, depending when you were, on the ground. Immediately after that, there was snowfall. So we got about 2 or 3 inches of snow. And in December, if you remember, I think it was the 30th, got 50 degrees out. So what happened? That snow melted and then froze again as the temperatures plummeted. And now we have 2 to 4 inches of ice on top of the grass. And we had another foot of snow. And in January, we also had 2 more warming events where it got into the 50s for over a day, which created more melting, which made anywhere from 3, in some places we have as much as 8 inches of ice on top of the grass. And then the polar vortex hit. And it stayed that way for the better part of 2 months. Now here's the fact about grass. Poana grass, which is the wild weed bluegrass that we have in Michigan, can only survive under those conditions for about 45 days. After that, because it's not able to take in CO2 and exchange it with oxygen, it will suffocate and die. For those of you that play golf at some other country clubs or in the Sanctuary Lake, the greens we have over at Sanctuary Lake are called bent grass greens. Bent grass can survive anywhere from 90 to 120 days under those conditions. We had somewhere between 60 and 70 days under those conditions. So the result of all that was we have a lot of dead-looking grass. Unfortunately, it's so in blend. This is the putting green. The green stuff is obviously alive, and we're happy about that. This dark brown, the white, the turquoisey looking stuff, this black, that's all dead. That's all dead grass. The yellowish, light brown that we have kind of on the fringes, we're hoping, beyond hope, that stuff will come back. We won't know. We probably won't know for another 2 or 3 weeks. The grass thinks it's March 10th today. We are 5 weeks behind in the growing season. Those of you that cut your own lawns, you already know that. You probably have already, typically would have had to mow your lawn, but nothing is growing. Or if it's growing very incrementally at the moment. So do we have damage elsewhere on the golf course? Yes, we do. Some of the rough is dead. There's dead grass in the fairways and on the tee boxes, but it's not really that pertinent. The greens are the things that are really in danger. So I'm just going to. This is the first green, worse than the putting green. This is number 5. This has been covered since the snow went away, and this was a picture we took right after we took the cover off. Basically, anything that's not green there is dead. This is hole number 12, par 5. Snow waters come on. That might be alive. That might be alive. The rest of this is all dead. And that green is closed at the moment. Here's number 18, which, believe it or not, that's probably one of the better greens that we have. That's probably maybe 75% good. And we can't explain this. That's the 16th green. It has one spot from the front left, and there's one spot in the back right. But other than that, it's pristine. If any of you can have any idea why 16 survived like that and the rest didn't, I'd love to hear from you. But we don't know. Yeah, my theory is that these trees here, which is the southern exposure of this green, might have blocked the sun during those warming events and maybe kept as much ice from forming on that green compared to the other ones. But that's just a pure guess as to what happened to us out there. And I'll go back. Just to reiterate, Sanctuary Lake, believe it or not, has never looked better. It is just the greens are thick and green and look absolutely wonderful. So what's the financial impact of what we're going through here? Well, our best bet so far is we do have some identifiable expenses that we have that were not in the budget and that are unavoidable. This isn't really the winter kill event, but this has to do with the polar vortex. We store 40 of our golf carts in our unheated pool barn at Sanctuary Lake. Even though we have a fleet of 75, we can only charge 32 of them at any one time. And in the summertime, we cycle that and work around those issues. But in the winter, we store the excess over at Sanctuary Lake. I mean, in the maintenance barn. It's unheated and they're not plugged in. We've been doing that since whenever you guys originally got electric carts, and it's never been an issue. And all the vendors can tell us it's never been an issue. Those batteries all froze over the winter. It was so cold for so long. So we had to go buy new batteries for all those carts. The winter kill effect on the bottom line is not going to be as much in just total expenses. It's really only about $6,000 in additional seed, fertilizer, and some aerification tines that we purchased to help us in that event. the impact is gonna be on the revenue loss. We'll get to what we've done, and where some of these numbers came from in the next slide, but in March, we had $75,000 of budgeted revenue, which is a reasonable expectation. We in the 4 years I've been here, we did greater than that once, about that the third time, and then this year is 0. So right off the bat, we're $75,000 behind because we got no revenue in March. Neither course was open. In April, the net impact is going to be, there's going to be no impact over at Sanctuary Lake. We expect to hit our revenue numbers over there. However, we're probably going to miss revenue at Sylvan by $65,000. Why is that? The biggest reason is to keep our golfers, to keep the leagues, to do the right thing by all our golfers. We've reduced rates at Sylvan Glen by 30 to 50% across the board. And we will do that as long as we have damage on the greens. We're hoping, you know, sometime in June, we'll be able to go back to some sort of regular rate. But we have so many golfers at Sylvan Glen who play in leagues and play regularly that we can't afford to lose them as our customers. So, as far as our leagues go, we have offered, we have a significant number of senior leagues that play Sylvan Glen in the mornings during the summertime, from Monday through Thursday. We have no leagues that play in the mornings at Sanctuary Lake. So what we've done is we've offered all of those leagues the opportunity to go switch to Sanctuary Lake if they would like, honoring the price structure that we have at Sylvan Glen, and just asking them to pay for the cart, because you have to take a cart over at Sanctuary Lake if you can't walk. Both the senior leagues play on Monday and Wednesday that organized through Parks and Rec are moving to Sanctuary Lake, and 2 of the other 4 leagues are moving over there. Probably the biggest thing that we've done to try to control the message is we typically utilize a call center as part of our POS service to make all of our tee times and be the primary answerer of our phones. So I don't have to hire 2 people, one to operate the cash register and one to answer the phone. And that call center is in Chicago. They do a pretty good job of it, making tee times and explaining, you know, we're cart path only today, or we're shut down today because we're flooded. However, this is a whole different animal. So for Sylvan Glen, we have turned the call center off for now, because I want the message about what are the conditions, what are the options, can we move you over to Sanctuary Lake? I want that delivered by one of our people. And the way that is set up right now is at least 75% of those phone calls are answered either by myself or by my assistant manager at the golf course. And just to give you an idea, as we answer, the phone rings about anywhere from 100 to 175 times a day. So it's not an insignificant message going out there. And this has gone over extremely well from all of the golfers. They appreciate the fact that they're being told the truth and the accurate course conditions up front. And we have some mystery shops attesting to that already that we've had this year. And then also we have flyers posted throughout explaining that. But I really think this is the key. Not everybody's going to be told 3 times about what's going on, but the person who made the tee time will have heard the message about the golf course and the conditions at least 3 times before they actually hit the first tee box. They're going to hear it when they make the tee time, they can hear about it when they check in, and they're going to hear about it from the starter before they head to the golf course. And so far, all that has really been helpful as far as to keep everybody satisfied with what's going on. So, what's the impact of that? Today, this is the last slide I showed you, it was like at the end of February. Today, this is my forecasts for where we're headed for our fiscal year. So I'm having it at about a combined just slightly less than $300,000. And again, the guarantee is $265,000. So believe you me, if that drops any lower, I'm going to hear about it from my bosses and from you. But the good part are, sorry about unintended consequences. One of the things that might happen with this is we may convert some Sylvan Glen golfers into Sanctuary Lake golfers. And we make a lot more money off of somebody when they play Sanctuary Lake than they do when they play Sylvan Glen. They're gonna spend at least $15 or more on average than they do at Sylvan Glen. And we run all the amenities over there. We have the driving range, we have the restaurant business. So that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world if we can get over the hump. As rough as Sylvan Glen is gonna be this year, this calendar year, when it's all said and done, because it's gonna be rough all year. Sanctuary Lake will have by far its best financial year ever. I don't think there's any question about that. I'm gonna kind of just run through these rest really quickly, but if anybody wants some questions, I'll stay here afterwards and I'd be happy to talk about these different items. Just want to talk a little bit about, just for a second, about our capital expenditures. This is just our plan for replacing our maintenance equipment, pretty standard. And again, you guys are extremely generous with keeping to these schedules. Quite honestly, much better than any other client I have ever seen. I try to tell our superintendent that a lot of times. But, I did just want to talk about this. At some point in time, there was budgeted some money to put a new irrigation system in Sylvan Glen. That's not part of our capital wish list. As told, that's not really applicable for our wish list. I just wanted to point out that needs to be done sometime. Oh. Okay, the rest of these I'm just going to kind of wing right through. These are mostly Billy Casper golf initiatives, things that we do, kind of the extra over and above stuff that you get by hiring us. We have strategic alliances with the two biggest providers of online tee times, Easy Links and Golf Now. We get better pricing from them than other companies. We're redoing our web pages also. This is actually the web page, of course, I came from in Cincinnati. Looks really nice. We're scheduled to flip to this web page in July. That would combine with a lot more digital networking opportunities, where we will give them the process of opening Twitter accounts for both golf courses, Facebook accounts for both golf courses, that sort of thing. We have a significant automated email campaign. Any of you that actually golf our facilities know that you get inundated from us with your emails thanking you for coming and trying to get you to come back if you haven't been for a while, and give you some surprise special bonuses. So that's all part of our automated plan. We have quite a few Grow the Game initiatives. Women on Course is a company that Billy Casper Golf bought last year. It's designed to get women into the golf lifestyle. It's not necessarily a golfing organization, but to get women to the golf course and do all those other things that men seem to do all the time. We have this Golf for Women, is a PGA of America sponsored program, and it's about teaching golf to women. Kids Play Free. It's essentially a program where kids under 18 can come with a parent and play for free or hit balls for free with a paying parent. And that's real successful in growing the game. That's all on a standby basis, so they can't make tee time. If we have an available tee time, we're more than happy to give it to a father and a son at buy one, get one free prices. And then we have the world's largest golf outing, is a initiative that we partnered with the Wounded Warrior Project. And last year we raised almost $740,000 for them nationwide. I think we had 80 courses all have a fundraising event on the same day. And this year we're taking this beyond just Billy Casper Golf and hope to raise about $2 million for Wounded Warriors. The Troy, we were very successful with that in both years that we've been doing that, raising a lot more money per golfer than average. So that speaks to the people of Troy. And then finally, this is the 10th year that Sanctuary Lake Golf Course has been open. We are in the beginning processes of planning an anniversary. The reason we don't have a date yet is we are trying to coordinate with Billy Casper himself to get the great man to come here to visit for that celebration. And as soon as we have him locked up for dates, then we'll get it out to everybody here. to put on your calendars and see how you might want to participate. For those of you that aren't golfers, besides being one of the nicest human beings that I've ever met in my life, Billy Casper is one of the top 10, top 20, top 30 golfers, depending on how you want to take a look at it. He had a career that's almost identical to Phil Mickelson. So what do you think about Phil's place in the golf universe? That's where Billy would be. Any questions? Thanks.
I think the obvious question is the capital issues with the, has that been budgeted from capital to take care of those issues this year, or is it taken out of the capital that we typically give there, or are you asking us at this point to do something about it?
Talking about I'm sorry, you're talking about the snow, the winter kill.
The batteries.
And the batteries.
No, we're handling all that through operations. I just wanted to kind of get you know.
So that's gonna cut into the profit,
That's why we're at 300,000, not 450.
Right. Okay. But we need to look at the irrigation issue.
Right, and it's,
At some point.
Mark, you can talk to that.
And we looked at that 4 years ago, Wade, I think, and we started once again, instead of taking it all at once, we were gonna start just doing it, because the thought was, it's gonna die, the golf course is gonna die if we don't put some water, and we're gonna lose all of our revenue, so we have to at some point take care of that issue.
I mean, we spend more money than average for a golf course our size fixing the irrigation system. It's Sylvan Glen every year. And it's not a big deal, but that's the reality. At some point, you know, in the near future, you know, the golf course, to maintain its quality, is gonna need a new irrigation system.
Mr. Miller?
As part of our more organized and formalized capital improvement planning process, City Council will have an opportunity to help schedule that and look at all of the capital priorities and plan it out in the future. And we've spent 2 years working on developing a process, so all the departments have been working on it. And this year, we're going to actually implement the planning process, which we come to council and the planning commission, because it's required in the Planning and Enabling Act, to prioritize those capital needs. So you'll have an opportunity to look at all of them, including the golf course.
Mayor Pro Tem Henderson?
The 3 greens that had the winter kill, and
Well, they all had winter kill. We've only closed 3 at the moment.
the 3 that are, okay, so all the winter kill areas, I saw a slide up there, you have seed and aeration, and is that gonna bring those areas back?
We seeded all the greens yesterday and today. Our expectation for that sort of process, basically we take one of the machines at times and makes a hole 3 inches deep, enough for the seed to get in underneath, so it's not gonna be damaged as it gets walked on. Expectation for that is that about 25 to 30% of those seeds are gonna take and grow up. So you're gonna get about 25 to 30% coverage from this initial seeding program. We also expect a similar percentage, 25 to 30% of the dead grass to be reawoken by existing poana seed that is in the greens itself, that has been lying dormant for who knows how many years. So if we could get good growing weather, probably the best expectation is to get about 50 or 60% of the dead grass to be germinated and have some grass growing on it in the next couple of weeks. And then we'll come back again and hit it again with another seeding and keep doing that until it all grows back in. I didn't mention it, we have a nursery green over by the maintenance barn. It's the second biggest green that's on the property, and again, for some reason, none of us know why. The nursery green is fine. So what we will do is once some of this seeding process shows some progress, we'll go to the greens that are closest to being ready to be totally playable again, and we'll use the sod on the nursery green to fill in those gaps. So our hope is within a month, we should have anywhere from 6 to 9 greens pretty much playable as normal. they're gonna be bumpy all season, but they're playable with normal, and hopefully the other 6 will come back, you know, by sometime in June, hopefully, but if anybody knows how to turn the weather up, that would help.
Councilman Pennington.
So just to clarify, you have how many temporary greens?
3.
Just 3? So
But if we were Oakland Hills, we'd have 17. You know, that one green I showed you is the only green that is by any reasonable, you know, description in good shape.
Okay.
But we don't have that luxury. And just to give you some ideas, some of our competition, Pine Trace has lost anywhere, but they lost about 15 greens. Plumbrook, Rackham, all 18. The North Course at Oakland Hills, 15 of their 18 greens. Now they spent $1 million to save the South Course, but they still don't know if that worked. Red Run, all 18 greens. Every golf course in Lansing and Ann Arbor, all 18 greens. So you can't really hurt anything the way we're doing it by opening it up as to public play. It's just not going to be the same quality of surface or experience that they've had in the past. But we're hoping that our measures with the reduced rates and the communication, that we won't lose any of our golfers.
But just to clarify for the public, 15 out of 18 greens, that's not that bad. I mean, considering the winter we had. So you've got 3 temporary greens that will be open sometime in the summer.
Most people, like I said, have been very, very positive. Of course, you get a couple of people that hate it, but, you know, it doesn't mean it.
Well, I guess the good news is that they're not going to other places, they're not experiencing the same thing, you know, so it's not like we're the only one that.
If your golf course is 25 years or older, you get slaughtered if you were north of 696, which is where the ice storm is.
Does Pine Trace have temporary greens, or they just
I think they only have 3 at the moment, but they're in the same boat as we are. Almost the whole golf course is for all intents and purposes, trash.
Councilwoman Hoder?
But no one's going on the course without knowing that what they're,
Yeah, they get.
everybody going on knows, going in.
Like I said, the person who made the tee time will hear about it 3 times, and everybody else will hear about it at least twice.
But I've played there, you know, you can tell people, but until you go out there and really see it, it's pretty bad.
I mean, as somebody who loves golf, golf courses, I mean, it's heartbreaking. I mean, our superintendent, he's beside himself. I tell him every day, Jim, there's nothing you can do about it. Just, we're trying to fix it.
But it's like they're everywhere. I mean, so it's not.
Oh, yeah.
We're not alone.
I think we appreciate that Billy Casper is kind of bitten the bullet on some of the issues that are gonna cost you some money, but I'm sure are we thinking about maybe in the future not putting the batteries in that storage, and maybe the Department of Public Works can help out with storage or something?
Well, the one thing that we could do is probably take the batteries out of all the carts that we store, you know, in an unheated area, and bring the batteries into a heated area. We have room in the other building at the maintenance plant, so I'm sure that's what we will do. It would be impractical and not cost effective to try to put them in a heated, plugged-in environment. It wouldn't make any economic sense. So that's the only thing that we can do, and we certainly will do that moving forward. But, you know, in our defense, it's never happened before.
No,
And how many carts was that were damaged?
40.
Out of how many?
75 is the fleet at both golf courses. We have 75 each.
Any questions?
It's a good thing we have a backup course.
Thanks, Don.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Oh, sit down, that concludes tonight, it's 9:30.
I was gonna take 15 seconds.
Took 30 minutes on that, and
Well, I think that was a great presentation on problem solving, something that hasn't happened probably in the history of Michigan, and Billy Casper has, I think, done a great job of problem solving with a lot of the issues that they had to deal with, you know, closing down their center and talking one-on-one. I think that's a great job, personally.
Would we share that with Scott?
good. Okay, so now the last issue, and probably the largest one with the least information, but something that's on our radar screen, because Councilmember Fleming continues to bring this up. And these two are the people who are involved in the Detroit Water Sewage Department and the status of that. And they put a few slides together, but we want to communicate to you tonight. This is, we don't really know much, but we will continue to do this on a regular basis at the city council meetings, as I said, Monday night. And tonight, they'll tell you just what they know today.
We're going to talk about DWSD and what really alternatives that are out there that are possibilities. Some of these don't make sense, but who knows where we're going to go. Alternate water systems. There was a study done in 2005 where they tried to look at what it would cost and if it would be beneficial to bring the water from Lake St. Clair across through Macomb County for 20 communities. They got partway through the study and it was just so obvious that the costs were so much greater than the benefit that they stopped the study to save the money. The city of Troy was part of that study at the time. Privatization we're going to talk about, regional water authorities, and there was a new one that has opened up in Flint, and then operations and activities under the current director, Sue McCormick, who came from Ann Arbor as their service operations and is now the director, and she became the director in 2012. So she's been there just about 2 years. And we say status quo, but there's a lot of activity that's actually going on there. Rick's going to talk about the alternate water systems and
like Tim said, that 20 municipalities that got together in 2005, was taking a pipe from Lake St. Clair, bringing it out here, got to $1.4 billion, and it was one pipe, no redundancy, hadn't talked sewers yet. It was like, it's ridiculous, and they gave us our money back. They took what they spent for the engineering study and gave us our money back. The Karagandhi Water Authority in Flint, I don't know if you've heard about that, but Flint now is going to be, they were a customer of DWSD. They've left the system and are taking water out of the Flint River starting Monday. They're going to use the DWSD system as their backup. That's going to be a huge decrease because they're like twice the size of the city of Troy to the DWSD system, and we have no idea how much water they're going to have to use. The Flint River may dry up. I don't know how big the Flint River is, but so we'll wait and see on that one, what happens there. That also is affecting Genesee County. So they're actually, and DWC was trying to get them as a customer to supply some more water for them up there. They lost that contract, so.
They just approved this past month to go out and get $220 million in bonds to build 63 miles of water main that will help to distribute the Flint water system into Genesee County.
And as you may know, Oakland County has just funded $500,000 to $3 million to look at an alternative study. They haven't spent it yet. They're still looking at engineering firms, I believe. Last I heard about that, I was at a meeting last Wednesday at the Southeastern Oakland County Water Authority, and the Water Resources Commissioner was there, Mr. Nash, along with a couple county officials,
Bob
Daddow and Jerry Poison, talking about these issues. They're already downplaying that. They are trying to negotiate with Detroit, but they're having some problems there. So that's about all the list is on for alternative systems right now. We'll see how that happens.
Yeah, and the other area that they're talking about is privatization. There were supposed to be proposals turned into Mr. Orr's office to look at that.
We were due in April 7th.
But they put out some information that said that they're waiting for the final proposals to come in June sometime. So we don't know if the proposals were incomplete or with what the county, Macomb and Oakland County were having issues, is Detroit giving them the right information and information to make an evaluation on. So we're not quite sure because we can't get anybody to tell us. We're making phone calls and there just isn't information there.
So, one of the brighter spots for us would be if we could get the Regional Water Authority. Been talked about a lot, been wanting that for years and years, and never could get through the Detroit system to let us have some authority on the board. Oakland, Wayne, and Macomb County haven't had a lot of luck with the EM's Board's management team. They're calling each other back and forth. I've read lots of memos, and they won't give us information. I gave the information. They're spending more money in law and lawyers and everything else. But the best news was I saw in the paper last week that Judge Rhodes has appointed Judge Rosen with Judge Cox and Judge Lawson as their mediators. And he's gonna put that team together and hopefully get those groups together so they can negotiate some kind of a deal for us. That would be the best for the city of Troy. We can't really live without the Detroit system. We have our internal system in Troy all set up for where the intakes come in. If it changes, we'd have to change everything inside our city too, so, which would be hugely expensive. So, to have the system we have now, we have fine-tuned our internal system in a perfect situation, so, it'd be tough.
Rick and I talk a lot every week about all the different scenarios. The Regional Water Authority would be the best thing, in our opinion, for future water and control and oversight of the Detroit system. So with that being said, we kind of want to give you just a little overview of the operation activities under the current director. Sue McCormick, as I mentioned, came from Ann Arbor. She was tasked with separating from the city of Detroit DWSD. She's been working on that. They have so far extracted the financial division and the legal division from Detroit's operation. They're looking and actively reorganizing all of the job titles. I'll give you a quick example of some of the issues Detroit had. They have an office where you can go in and pay your water bill. There was 12 people in that office. 6 of those people could wait on the counter and answer phones to take credit cards to pay the bill. The other 6 people there could take payment at the counter, but they were not allowed to take telephone. So the burden was on 6 of the people, and most of the people wanted to call in and pay their bill. So the other 6 people, most of the time, were sitting there, very inefficient. So what she's done is taken nearly 140 different job titles that people were restricted, they could only do certain things. Reorganized that, made new job titles, and now has basically something of a 65 to 70 different structures within the organization. Just a huge savings with the staffing. And in doing so, she did pilot programs with the employees. She got the input from the employees and developed a new organizational structure completely. That has not been completed. She's probably about halfway to maybe close to 2/3 of the way through that, but that's made a huge difference in savings. The other item that you may have seen recently, they're starting to shut off water. People owe $20,000, $30,000 on residential pieces of property. They've never leveraged shut-offs to collect. They're quoting $118 million of uncollected water bills. And you'd think that you know, they would put some emphasis on it. One of the large areas were even school and city services. Very large bills unpaid. Golf courses, the city of Detroit owns unpaid water bills.
We're also having trouble with other municipalities like Highland Park, Inkster, Hamtramck, the ones that are under emergency managers, not getting payments from them either. So they have a lot of work to do.
And Rick and I have a lot of respect for the current director and what she's accomplished in a short period of time.
She has done well. So either one of those two options, the last two options that we presented are gonna be best for the city of Troy. I kind of prefer us having a little more say in what's going on down there, 'cause I think the suburbs are 80% of their business. That's about all we have. Any questions? There probably will be some.
Does the emergency manager have anything to do with say in that?
He has everything to do with the same.
You got the emergency manager who wants to grab as much money as he can for the city of Detroit, whether it's right or wrong. And here's Oakland County, Macomb County, Wayne, so well, we're not paying for that, this, and this.
He wants us to lease the system was his last offer. For $47 million.
A year,
Like
40 years.
For 40 years.
But we already pay him a rate of return every year since we've always paid them a rate of return for their investment in the system.
So those are the big rubs between the representatives from Oakland, Macomb, and Wayne County is that, you know, Orr's responsibility is to get every penny he can to get them out of bankruptcy, but we're not looking to pay off all their debt just because it was mismanaged.
Pulled in the water.
Thank you for this update, and we've had discussions outside of this meeting too. But the problem is Detroit has a monopoly, DWSD has a monopoly. When you have a monopoly, you control all the cards unless something changes with the regional authority and so forth. Mr. Orr is going to settle the past mismanagement practices of the DWSD on Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb counties, and our water bills are really going to go up. So it bears watching, and anything we can do, and any citizens need to be aware of it too. Talk to the state level, whatever we can do, because I'm telling you, this is coming down, and it's going to come down pretty quickly. Our water bills will be going up if we don't get some regional authority or something and take control away from the city. And it's not, we just need to be aware of it, and it's going to we're going to have some input from the state level.
That's another thing that Brooks was saying, they need to get some state level in there. So.
And that's where the talks broke down, is because, you know, the Orr and the counties were not satisfied either. And that's where the judge now has invoked mediation and brought a couple of judges from the East Coast who are specialists in this in to work on his district's issue here, which is huge.
One thing we talked about in our meetings when we met individually is possibly putting in a storage tank to store water in the daytime, so to gravity feed that out. We know at night, so we pump it in at the lower rates and we feed it out. That may not be practical either, but you're still looking at that.
Yeah. On that one lot that we talked about.
Yeah.
Too small. We could have
Too
had,
small on that one.
Yeah. We could have had like 750,000 gallons in there. And
not enough.
Not enough. Wouldn't have.
You gotta have about 3 million just to make it feasible.
Yeah.
And not only that, the DEQ does not allow us, because they've got to approve any changes to our water system for you to put underground tanks totally. So we could put 10 feet under the ground, and our regulations here in the city only allow us to put 20 feet above the ground, so we couldn't get capacity. But who's gonna want a tank 20 feet above the ground next to their house? That's,
Right.
that's,
The lot's
that's
too
a
small.
big issue. That lot is way, way too
Well,
small.
Rochester Hills tried to bring that up, and
They had a great location up there.
well, unless you lived in a subdivision that was right there, you know?
I'm just saying they had a great location from my perspective. They had a park, and there was a hill on the back side, and they were able to put a tank in that would look like a home, and because it wasn't fully underground, the back was exposed, and they could landscape that so people really couldn't see it. The issue was when they came to city council, the residents in the subdivisions below were afraid that the tank would break, and they'd have the situation that they had out west with, the landslide, and their homes would be wiped out. Far-fetched, but they were able to.
I know somebody that lived in the subdivision, so, unless you live there,
Not in my backyard.
That
That's
didn't
an
last
issue.
very long.
Yeah, it's a major issue.
Major issue.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, we'll keep you informed on what's going on.
Well, I think from the city's perspective, if we can do anything to push for regional, we should.
We have. And Rick and I will be attending all kinds of meetings. We attend quarterly TAC meetings. There's monthly meetings that either one of us attend to, and as Rick mentioned, with Mr. Dado and Mr. Nash, he attended a meeting that talked directly about, the authority the other day, and we will continue to do that, bring that information back.
Thank you. Councilwoman Horry?
Is there anything formal we need to do to make this plea beyond, consensus here that we're nodding at you, or is that not significant?
No, there's nothing at this point. We will bring it to you if we can ask you to have some kind of a resolution in the future that may help, but the biggest thing that happened was last Thursday on the 17th when the judge invoked everybody to come to the table for mediation.
Okay.
That was a very, very good thing.
Mr. Kishner, did you want to do a wrap-up?
I'd love to do a summary of these last two nights, and so I would take you to page 43 in the book. But simply as a reference point, not to really go through page 43, but 43 through 52 demonstrates in real boring spreadsheet fashion the overall success of the city from a financial standpoint. And I hope this team approach that we have continued this year and drilling down into issues on the second night has been helpful. And it gives us a springboard to go the next 6 months and continue to identify issues and provide more information and more dialogue that's meaningful. But in summary, I think it's you should be pleased at the financial situation in the city that is improving. It's not great, it's improving though, and Troy has certainly in the past made the changes that are necessary, and I think you're seeing the benefits of that today. And now the idea is to continue to rebalance so that we have a long-term approach and success.
Great. For me personally, I think if you read from pages 3 through the executive summary, it's a very good part of the budget that you can really understand it. It's well written, it's well done, and I think that's easily readable right there. It explains almost everything. So on May the 12th, you will present a budget that was outlined in the last 2 meetings.
That's right.
So if there are any questions, they should be asked tonight. And I think Mr. Kishnick would appreciate questions tonight. But I would echo that it was a great process. It made it very easy for us to move into the study sessions this year because of what was done prior to tonight. So really appreciate it. Councilman Fleming.
Not a question, just a point, but Brian may want to speak to it as well. The first night, we looked at the fund balance and how it was really eroding at the slope, how it's coming down, you know. And concerned that in 2018, that we're going to be below our self-established limits, you know, that we just recently did. But we're hoping that doesn't happen, but the main reason for that, Mr. Kishing, is because we're taking this fund balance and spending significant amounts on capital projects, not operating expenses. But if you just look at that slide by itself, I forget the page number, we were looking at it the other night, it's really showing that our fund balance is dropping. We know it may not drop as quick because we're still going to have maybe a little pad in our insurance. As we were saying tonight, maybe $1 million a year that will go back into that fund balance if we don't have to use it. Maybe still a little from lack of personnel, not being able to fill all the positions, although we're gonna close that gap, we're told. But in the past, we've had significant amount of revenue go into that fund balance, that unassigned fund balance, because we weren't filling positions and insurance costs. So that, I believe, we're getting closer in a budget, it's going to shrink. But there's really no concern from your perspective that we're going to be in trouble in 3 years on our fund balance, because we're actually using it for capital projects, not operating.
Yeah, at this point in the conversation, I usually get my crystal ball.
Yes.
And I make sure that my predictions right now, when I'm on record, but I have, we've talked about this a couple of times over the last 2 nights. We have all confidence that when we're taking one-time expenditures, which is in the policy, I went to the policy here, we just summarized it here, so you won't find it here, but in the whole policy, we're taking money and putting it to capital, one-time expenditures to do the kinds of Troy Roads, rock, that we were talking about, and then more to capital. Our structural imbalance is not there. Our gap is closing though, but it's closing by design. It's closing by working with HR and taking monies and eliminating furlough and some of the operational things, but we're certainly not out of balance by any stretch of the imagination. And, you know, it's no secret that we budget conservatively also. And you do that so that this city is very sustainable and on financially stable ground. So yes, I have no, we do not have a concern that that's going to drop below. Now, if we spend money and it does, we'll have a plan to make sure it's brought to the levels, because the difference today from yesterday is we have a policy now. So you can be assured that we will be budgeting and spending in accordance with the outcomes that are needed to meet that policy.
And that's why it's an evolving budget for 3 years. And, but I look forward to seeing the capital plan, because although you're saying some of these are one-time, we do have to look into the future in about 3 years from now, and we need to budget each year for those capital that are important to the people here.
Let me be clear, when I'm talking about fund balance, I'm talking about general fund balance. We do have an issue in the capital fund in terms of project needs and revenues, okay? I was only addressing the chart that he talked about was general fund balance. So it will be one of those next steps, ongoing discussion, capital fund and projects and resources.
Any questions from council? Councilman Teets?
My question had to do with the volunteer firefighter incentive program. On the slide where it said we're budgeted 1 million, and this is the number that it currently will be that's 1.2 million. Is that correct?
The actuary was 1,078,000, right? That's what we budgeted when we only took the 642 number. Okay, so that's why it said that this may be a little confusing there, but it's 1,078,000 for 642 in last year's budget. Okay, now what we did was we did an actuary that said, okay, if you have these additional increases every year and then a 2.5% change your mortuary tables, keep your investment returns the same, then it would be, I think it's $1.4 million. I don't have it in front of me.
$400,000 more.
Yeah, 400, but you have not approved that, and we have not asked you to approve that. We've simply wanted to show that information and the financial ramifications if we agree to a schedule like that. So we are, and Tom will always say this, 100% funding our ARC, right?
Yes.
You know, the actuarial required contribution, the ARC. We always do that. So that's the difference there. You're kind of seeing a blend of a proposal and then a 642 as the benefit per year.
And there's some negotiations that are still going on.
A lot of discussions, yeah. Like the chief said, it's hard to negotiate with volunteers. But
I'm all for providing a good incentive program to the volunteers. Without them, we're in trouble, so.
I'm too, it's, just $400,000 gets to be real money, I guess,
Sure,
and so
absolutely.
it's easy to say, you know, what's.
But there was $1 million,
set aside
Set aside.
in assigned fund balance that would go over, but we will show that, Mayor
Right.
and Council, because remember, we did the actuary with some cash infusions. I think I did send that out in an email, but we will be demonstrating what lump sum cash infusions of $1 million, $2 million, $4 million, what the impact they have on the ARC. And it's not significant. No, it's significant, it's not substantial.
Okay.
questions?
Just appreciate the work.
Good job.
Sure. But before we adjourn, we have to open it up to public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak this evening? Hearing none. I echo, great job, you know, it was really made it very simple for us to get to this position, I think. Great job.
Great job by the whole staff.
Everybody did a great
I just show up in the morning and they do all the work.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear. Okay, we're adjourned.